So in this lesson, we're going to be continuing the theme of decimals, but this time we're going to be looking at how to multiply and divide decimals. And if you don't know how to multiply and divide normally, then you need to watch those videos first before watching this one. We're going to start with a quick recap of place value. So pause the video and then we'll have a look at the answers together. Starting with the first one then, so we need to write 3 ones, 6 tenths, and 3 hundredths, which is 3.63. Our next one is 4 tenths, so that's going to go here, which means we're going to put the decimal point there. 2 hundredths and 5 thousandths, so that's going to be 0.425. And number 3 is 8 tenths, 4 tenths, and 1 thousandths. So we need to put the zeros in those missing areas, and that's going to give us 80.401. So dividing decimals is really straightforward. What we need to do is just multiply out the decimals. So in this example here, we've got 4.2 divided by 0.6. And if we times both of these numbers by 10, we're going to move this decimal to the right once, which will give us 42/6. And 42 divided by 6 we can do normally, so I'm going to do the bus stop method. So 6 won't go into 4, so I just need to do my 6 times tables, and that's going to give me 7. So 4.2 divided by 0.6 is 7. And the reason that we don't need to do anything else with that number is because 4.2 divided by 0.6 is the same as doing 42 divided by 6, which would also be the same as doing 420 divided by 60, because you're just doing different powers of 10. I'm going to try another one here. So if you pause the video first, have a little go, and then we'll go through it together. So we need to multiply out these decimals. So we have 368, and that will give us 4. We need to move both of the decimal points once or by 1 power of 10. So 368 divided by 4. And again, let's do our bus stop method that we learned in another video. So 4 won't go into 3, so we're going to carry the 3 over. 4 is going to go into 36 9 times, and then 4 is going to go into 8 twice. So 36.8 divided by 0.4 is 92. One more to try here, so pause the video. Okay, so we can see again that if we times both of these by 10, it's going to give us 144 divided by 12. So we've multiplied out those decimal points. And if we can remember our squares, we should know that 12 squared, or 12 times 12, is actually 144. So 14.4 divided by 1.2 is 12. So the questions here are no harder than what we've been doing. We still need to multiply out our decimals, so we're going to times this side by 10, and what we do on one side we need to do on the other two, so I also need to multiply this side by 10. So that's going to give me 80 divided by 2, which is 40, so 8 divided by 0.2 is 40. So pause the video and have a go at these questions. Question 4 is going to have a decimal as an answer, so I recommend doing the bus stop method for your division. Let's go through the first one then. So let's multiply out our decimal. So that means we're going to times that side by 10. We also need to do that to the other side. So that's going to give us 320 divided by 4, which is 80. For our next one, we're going to multiply this side by 10. So we also need to do it to the other side, remember. So that's going to be 1000 divided by 5, which is 200. Okay, question 4 is the slightly tricky one because we are going to go into a decimal as the answer. So I need to multiply this side by 10. So I also need to do this side. So I'm looking at 242 divided by 40. And if you know your 40 times table, or you only need to know your 4 times table for this, you're going to know that 242 isn't a multiple of 40. So I'm just going to write my 40 times table out to the side because this is going to make it much easier for me to do this. I'm adding quite a big line because I know that I'm going to go into a decimal. So I'm just going to add a few zeros there. 240, 242. Okay, so 40 is not going to go into 2. 40 isn't going to go into 24. And 40 is going to go into 242. Well, we can see 240 there, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times with 2 left over. 40 isn't going to go into 20, but 40 is going to go into 200, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So the answer to this one is 6.05. Our next one then, so we need to times this one by 10, which means we also need to do that to the other side. So we're doing 880 divided by 16. I'm going to do the bust up method again for this because we are looking at a bit of a bigger number. And again, you can write your times tables to the side like this. It sometimes can help make it a little bit clearer. Okay, so 16 isn't going to go into 8. 16 is going to go into 88 5 times with 8 left over. And then 16 is going to go into 80 another 5 times. So that's going to give us 55. So you're more likely to get worded questions, so pause the video and have a go at this one. So starting with our first question then, Claire's got 660 grams of sweets. She wants to put them into jars, and each jar is going to hold 82.5 grams of sweets. So how many jars would she need? So we're going to do 660 divided by 82.5. We're going to need to multiply this by 10 to get rid of it at the decimal point, which means we need to do the same on that side. So we're going to do 6,600 divided by 825, which will give you 8 jars. If the total price for 6 adult tickets to the theatre is £218.40, what's the price for one? So this is a slightly bigger one if you aren't using a calculator. So we're doing 218.40 divided by 6. So we actually need to multiply this by 100 to get rid of our decimal points. So that's going to give us 21840 divided by 600, which should give you £36.40. Now we're going to have a look at multiplying decimals. So we've got 6 times 3.7. And what we do is we actually ignore that decimal point, and we're going to do 6 times 37, which is going to give us 222. We then need to count how many decimal places we had in the question, which is just 1. There's 1 decimal place. Now if you imagine that the decimal point is here, we're then going to need to move that decimal place once. So we're going to move it once, which will give us 22.2. Let's try another one. We've got 1.2 times 4.6. So ignore your decimal points and let's do 12 times 46, which will give us 552. Let's put that decimal point in there, and we need to count how many decimal places we had in our question, which is 2. We now need to move that decimal point twice, which is going to give us 5.52. So now we've got 7.6 times 0.34. So pause the video and try this one by yourself. Okay, so let's check what you got. So we're going to get rid of our decimal points, and we're going to do 76 times 34, which will give us 2,584. Let's put a little note where that decimal point is going to go. And then we need to count how many decimal places we had, which was 3. So we now need to move this decimal place 1, 2, 3 there, which is going to give us 2.584. So multiplying decimals is really straightforward. You just need to remember how many decimal places there are in your question. So pause the video here, try these ones, and then we'll go through the answers together. So let's start with our first one. We're going to ignore that decimal point and we're going to do 5 times 4, which is 20. We then need to count how many decimals places that we had, which is just 1. So we need to move our decimal once, which is going to give us 2. So 5 times 0.4 is 2. Next one, so ignore your decimal. We're going to do 6 times 2, which will give us 12. Let's count how many decimal places we had, which is just 1. Let's move our decimal point once to give us 1.2. Next one, we're going to do 11 times 7, which will give us 77. Count your decimal places, which is just 1. Move your decimal point once. That's going to give you 7.7. Next one, we're going to do 12 times 14, which is 168. Let's count our decimal places. Again, it's just 1. So let's move that decimal point once to give us 16.8. Next one, we've got 47 times 7. I'm actually going to do this one as the grid method because it's a bigger number. So if you can't remember how to do the grid method, there is a video you can go back and watch, but you need to bring your 0 down. 4 times 7, 28. 7 times 7, 49. You then add those numbers together to give you 329. Let's count our decimal places, just 1 again. So that's going to go there and give us 32.9. And last one, we're going to do 5 times 39. I'll do grid method again. So bring your 0 down, 5 times 3 is 15, and 5 times 9 is 45. Add those ones together. So we're doing the column method here. It's going to give you 195. How many decimal places? Just 1 again. Move the decimal point 1, and that's going to give you 19.5. So our last questions are on this slide then. So pause the video and then we'll go through the answers together. So our first question, we're going to do 1 times 5, which is going to give us 5. Let's go back and count our decimal places, which is 2. So we're going to move our decimal point twice to give us 0.05. Our next one, we're going to do 7 times 3, which is 21. Go back and count our decimal places, which again is 2. So move the decimal point twice to give us 0.21. Then we're going to do 14 times 2 to give us 28. And this one, it requires a few more zeros in it. So if we go back and count our decimal places, we actually have 4. So we need to move this decimal point 4 times, which is going to be 0.0028. If you ever think you don't know if you've added enough zeros, you can actually go back and check it the other way. So if I move the decimal point 4 times, which is how many times we've got here, so 1, 2, 3, 4, that would give me 28 again. So I know that that's the right answer because that's 14 times 2. Then I've got 5 times 5, or 5 squared, which is 25. Let me go and count my decimal places. I've got 3. So I'm going to move my decimal point 3 times to give me 0.025. And I can check that again. So let me see if I move this 3 times, because 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. that would give me 25 again, which is 5 times 5, so I know that I've done the right amount of zeros. Question 5 is a beetle weighs 0.6 grams. Calculate the weight of 4 identical beetles. So I need to do 0.6 times 4, or 6 times 4, which is 24. Let me just count how many decimal places I had, which is just 1. I'm going to move this decimal point once to give me 2.4 grams, and make sure that you put your unit to get your marks in an exam. A slightly longer one, so we have 3 children that are all 1.23 meters tall. So that's going to be 3 times 1.23. Then we have 2 children who are 1.25 meters tall, so then I've got 2 times 1.25, and 1 child is 130 centimeters tall. Then we need to convert that 130 centimeters to 1.3 meters. Calculate the sum of their heights. So in our first one then, we're going to do 3 times 123. And our second one, we're going to do 2 times 125. So 3 times 123 is 369. And 2 times 125 is 250. Just go and check our decimal places. So we have 2 here and 2 there. So I'm going to move my decimal point twice in both answers to give me 3.69 and 2.5. I'm then going to add all of these numbers together. So 1.3, 3.69, just to make it easier, I am just going to get rid of that M, and 2.5. And remember from our addition and subtraction video, we need to make sure that we add the same amount of zeros in our decimal places. So I'm going to put a 0 there, and then I'm going to add it. So 9 in my hundredths column, it would be 14 in my tenths, so 4 carry the 1, and in my ones column, going to be 7, so it's 7.49 meters. Always remember to put your units.